not everybody's meant to be a franchise owner or business owner in general. There's plenty of
Come
people
on.
that, are going to go their whole life working for whoever they work for, and that's okay too. But if you're not that person and you don't want to do it, you just got to take the leap, man. Burn the boats and don't turn back.
Yeah, and
Come
I'll
on.
add just quickly on that. I heard a really good speaker recently, and she was talking about fears and how in her mind she always did the what if. And I think so many people do the what if. I do the what if all the time as well. What if this goes wrong? What if I lose all my money? What if I make the wrong decision? And she made a really interesting point that I had never thought of before. Why don't we ever do the what if to the positive side? Like, what if this does succeed? What if I am happy in doing this? What if this fulfills the dream that I have that I've been deferring?
Yo, this is the Streetwise podcast, where we help you level up your game, level up your leadership, and level up your life. I'm your host, Matthew McReynolds. I'm a multi-brand franchisee, and I'm a franchise consultant, which means I help people find, launch, and build their ideal franchise business. My main goal is to help you get off of zero and become the person that your dreams need you to be. Buckle up, get your popcorn ready, let's go. Streetwise Nation, what's going on? Today we got Chad, Tracey, and Josh Markland with Second Family here on the Streetwise stage today. Gentlemen, what's going on? Appreciate y'all.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Great to be with you.
Yeah, likewise. So I'm getting better at doing the three-way conversations here. I love that we're getting to talk to both you guys at the same time. So first, let's start with this. How you guys relate? Like, what's the connection between you two co-founders with this brand? Let's start there real quick. Let the audience hear you tell your story and how you guys know each other.
Yeah, I guess I'll tell this quick story. Yeah, Josh and I are cousins. Yeah, so
There we go.
we have a slight age difference of about 10 years. I'll let you guys figure out who's who, but yeah, it's kind of unique when we started the business because I wasn't really sure what he brought to the table, because when he was 10, I was 20, and I didn't really feel like hanging out with a 10-year-old, and probably when he was 22, he didn't feel like hanging out with a 32-year-old. So yeah, it just worked out well that we were able to work together.
So Josh, let me hear your perspective now on how did this whole thing come together? How did this relationship facilitate? So you guys are cousins. There's an age gap, 10 years, but now you're business partners and co-founders of a brand that's been around for a while.
Yeah,
explain that to me.
Absolutely. Our grandmother had dementia. Quick story there is that Chad's mom was kind of the primary caretaker. Our grandmother's name is Dee Dee.
Wow.
And she battled with Alzheimer's dementia for about 10 years. At one point, our family had put her in a facility, and it wasn't a good experience. And so they brought her back out of the facility, and they moved her into Chad's parents' house. They had a detached kind of garage with a cottage above it. And so she lived in the cottage for a long period of time. And it was my aunt, Chad's mom, who was the primary arranger of the care at that point. And so she was getting people out of the newspaper, this was several years back, and, kind of managing the case, managing the care, making sure that the caregivers were there. They would call out constantly. They had a bunch of drama, the typical stuff that you hear about in our industry. And so it was a full-time job for my aunt trying to keep track of all of that. And at the end, our grandmother needed 24/7 care. So there's tons of people in and out. And so Chad was kind of on the periphery watching his mom deal with this and the struggles that she was having. And as he always says, he was looking for some more satisfaction in his career at that time. I had just come back from overseas. I was doing some missionary work overseas for about a year and a half. And so I came back and I was trying to figure out what my next step was going to be. I knew I wanted to start a business and to be in business for myself, but I wasn't entirely sure what that looked like or what I really wanted to do to pursue that. And so I think it was probably a little divine intervention. At one point, Chad reached out. I don't know what caused him to reach out to me. I'm not sure he even knows what caused him to reach out to me, but he called one day and kind of pitched me the idea for what would become Second Family and how our family's experience could be taken and improved upon for others who were going through a similar scenario that we were. Obviously, there's a ton of numbers that we could throw at you for demographics for the baby boomers as they're aging into needing care at this point. Chad's always been a forward thinker, and I think he saw that coming and was looking to to jump into that as an area of opportunity, but also an area of meaning that would add value to not only his life, but others as well. So that's how we got off the ground.
Man, that's powerful. My mom has been the caretaker for, gosh, my aunt, my grandmother, and my great aunt, and all of them have now passed. But I mean, over the course of my entire life, as a teenager to young adult, I just could see my mom struggling, trying to take care of these people that were her family, and all in different stages. And so I know that plight very intimately. And Chad, I was looking at I was looking at your LinkedIn page, man, and I got to tell you, I'm on LinkedIn quite a bit. Anybody that's listening knows that. And a lot of people have very long LinkedIn resumes with a variety of experiences. I mean, you've held it down at very few locations for a very long time, which I think that's unique and it's very cool. None of those were in the senior care space, though. So what was that like in your mind? And I mean, to the listener, I mean, look this guy up, Chad Tracey. You've got like 10 to 12 years in all the spots that at least that you have listed. And I see finance, I see mortgage related experience, none of that senior care. So what was that like when you made that leap? And I mean, you made the choice and you found the industry and you brought Josh in. What was that like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't get that too often, but you said it right. I'm definitely a leaper, 100%. But I certainly in this endeavor, I needed some leaping assistance from Josh. Um, but yeah, I will say that I was a business owner, and I owned a mortgage company for many years, and prior to that, I worked 10 years as a managing partner with someone else, and then I started on my own.
Okay.
So I guess I thought I had enough business experience to be able to get this thing off the ground. But yeah, I mean, Josh and I always talk about the fact that we knew nothing about healthcare. We saw the need, we saw the demographics, and we just figured it out. I had the ability to be able to start it kind of on the side. I already had an office and employees and copiers and desks and all the things that you need.
Sure.
So really, we were able to start it off the ground like very cheaply. It was a challenge getting licensed. We can talk later about how we can help franchisees with that. But at the time, I needed a lot of help getting licensed. Josh kind of took that role over. But, we have some different types of skill sets, I think, that you need to be a business owner. I've often said that you can't have two yous if you want to have you and another partner.
Come on. Yeah.
I had a sales marketing background, so I figured, hey, I can translate that into doing sales and marketing for this business. We were passionate about it, so never really had any doubts that we'd have any problems getting it off the ground. But Josh brought, more of an administrative background. He had some experience in IT, which I do not. And so we just kind of followed those paths, like me down sales and marketing, Josh down more of an administrative path. And we just, continue down those separate paths to this day, really. So just left, like you said, and figured it out as we went. That's a short version.
No, that's really special, man. You said something that I find super important for anybody who's looking at a franchise opportunity or just starting a business from scratch and they're considering a business where they're required to build a team, or maybe it's a business opportunity that's going to require them to partner with somebody else. And it's truly understanding your strengths and weaknesses and then leveraging the strengths and weaknesses of another person. Was that clear for you guys in the beginning, or was that something that you had to like rub elbows and kind of weed out some of those hard parts? And for context, I'm in business ownership with my dad, and so not cousins, but the age gap, I mean, I get that. It's almost generational. You guys are closer than my dad and I were, and the relationship's a little bit different, but I can only imagine there might have been some stuff there that you had to figure out how you were going to facilitate those roles.
We did, but I feel like it presented itself pretty clearly, pretty early on. I came to Maryland to help him get licensed, as he said. And so I was 100% like in the paperwork, the policies and procedures that needed to be done. And and I would maybe take some questions to him or loop him in. And just from the conversations, like, okay, this isn't his strength, this is more mine. And I would listen to him talk to the first few clients that we had. And like, clearly that was where he was meant to spend his time.
Sure.
And the operations side was where I was meant to spend my time. So
what a beautiful thing.
yeah.
Oh, what a beautiful thing.
Like Josh said, divine intervention. And I think that that's accurate because, yeah, we didn't know what each other brought to the table. I don't think he knew what I brought to the table, and I didn't know what he did. And we had a little trial period and just worked out.
So a lot of times when I talk about people making that leap or that shift, there's an identity crisis or identity shift that a person has to go through. And I like asking that to founders because franchisees are often going through that same identity shift as well, getting out of their role. Did you guys experience that at all, and getting to a new industry that you felt intimately needed some additional assistance and you felt like you could add value? Was there anything that you guys maybe struggled with in getting it off the ground from an identity side, but also just getting into the space?
I mean, we kind of set our goals and our motto right away, and I think our motto is in our name, right? Like second family, right? So you were lucky enough to have your mom be able to care for your family members, and that's the best scenario, right? We admit that, but not everybody can do that. I'm sure it's really hard on her as well. Other people can't do it because they have other jobs, they need to keep working, they have kids, whatever it might be. And so if we were going to do this from an identity standpoint, we wanted to be the Mercedes of home care. So everything that we ever thought about I'm talking about when we were just talking about planning the company all the way through to today as we're franchisors and growing the business nationally, it's like, what can we do to make this, the Mercedes of home care? The goal is to spread our particular program on how we care for seniors in a way that, that we would be happy to use ourselves for our own grandmother, right? And so we kind of implemented the grandma guarantee, which is a trademark term that we use and kind of goes along with being the Mercedes of home care. And, really, we ask every franchisee to most of them have a story, right? Most people don't get into our industry because, let's get into it. But they have had an experience with an aging relative typically. And so we ask them to kind of, when they're hiring a caregiver, for example, would I put this person with my own grandmother, my own mother, my own person who needed care? So I think that's kind of the way we tried to position ourselves. Also being a kind of a one-stop shop, a full service kind of organization where, if it's not something that we can help a family with, that we'll find the right resources for them in the local community. So we ask our franchisees to kind of make a lot of relationships in the local community. That's why we need franchisees. Otherwise, we could kind of run our system all over the country, but we need owners. We need people with skin in the game, people with boots on the ground that can loop in, let's say, hospice, for example. And so I might not be conducting the actual hospice, but I can, bring it to that family if that's something that they need. So just being, again, just the Mercedes of home care, being able to make them feel safe in the decision of keeping their loved one at home, not just now, but all the way through, right? If we're all going to pass away at some point, and most people want to do it at home amongst their family. So that's what we try to bring to the table for everybody.
And I'll even add from a personal standpoint, in terms of identity, I didn't entirely understand the home care space when we got started. And there was a lot of learning as we made mistakes and as we met people and talked through it. But there was always that sense of I'm doing more of what feels good and feels exciting and feels right. I had so many cubicle jobs prior to having gone overseas where I just sat there all day counting the hours until I could go home. And I always tell the story. I was sitting in my cubicle one day and I was just like, I can't do this for the next 35, 40 years. Like, this is miserable. I hate this. And so even though what second family would become at that point was definitely an unknown, and we were learning and making more mistakes than we were having wins, it still felt good. And it felt like we were doing something that was exciting and we were making progress and learning. And so from an identity standpoint, that felt very right early on.
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, I love that. And I love this great opportunity to transition into explaining what second family is. What are the revenue streams? How do you help people? And when somebody decides to become a franchise owner with you guys, what does that process look like for them? How are they able to build a business in their community?
Yeah, so I'll tackle that. So Second Family, we provide senior in-home care in what's called the non-medical space. And really all that means is that we're not doing medical activities, but we're helping more along the lines of what's called activities of daily living, ADLs. So that would be bathing, grooming, meal preparation, light housekeeping. We can help with medication reminders, transportation assistance, anything that the senior would need assistance with to maintain their standard of living wherever they are. And so that can be in a single family home. It could be in an independent living facility. We've even gone in and provided care in assisted living when folks needed more one-on-one hands-on care. So wherever, we always say wherever grandma is or wherever mom is where we will go, and we'll help maintain her standard of living wherever she is. In terms of revenue sources, this is where we've started talking a lot lately about home care 2.0. And I think what we mean by that is kind of the late 90s, early 2000s is when some of the national brands that people know of today, the Visiting Angels, the Right at Homes of the world, that's when they kind of took off and got started. And they grew for the last 30 years and did phenomenally well. The reason that I think that this is the start of Senior Care 2.0 is because the payer mix, which has traditionally skewed very much towards the private pay side, is starting to change in our favor. And so I think not only the payer mix, but the baby boomers aging into needing care is why it's a really exciting time to get into senior care. We still primarily deal with private pay clients. So because this is non-medical, your health insurance isn't going to pay for this. If you've got long-term care insurance, that could pay for this. But primarily we're dealing with private pay individuals. There's also some exciting government third-party payer options now. We're working with the VA a lot, who have really good reimbursement rates. It makes it worth the business owner's time to pursue that relationship. There's some Medicaid opportunities state by state. It varies as to how attractive it is, but there's a lot of opportunity in Medicaid. And the Medicare Advantage is something that's not quite there yet, but in the coming years, we see that being a really viable third-party payer source as well. So definitely an exciting time to try to get in right now as these third-party options sort themselves out to be well established to care for the baby boomers over the next 10, 15, 20 years.
So are you guys hiring caregivers? Are franchisees hiring caregivers? Are they more so recruiting? How does that piece work? Like what does a franchise owner's team look like?
Yeah, I'll take that, Matthew. So yeah, the probably the number one biggest thing that a franchisee is going to want to have is a solid staff of caregivers.
Okay.
Now, that could be certified nursing assistants in some states. Other states require a lesser certification. It just really depends state by state. The good thing is we're hiring a lot of kind of what we would kind of term it the Uberization of home care, right?
I like that term.
The difference is that these are actual employees because, we need to manage them. We need to kind of tell them where to go and things like that. But we do give them utmost flexibility. Today's employee wants either pay or flexibility. Maybe they want both, but it's usually one or the other, right? So we give the caregiver the full flexibility to give us whatever their schedule is. We might have a caregiver that's a nursing student, for example. Their schedules change every semester, and during breaks, they can work full time. And that's totally fine with us. They have the ability to electronically give us their availability, and we try to fill it. So I know a lot of people get turned away by the fact that you have to have a lot of employees, and it's true, we do have to have that in this industry. But you have a lot of part-time employees, what's called flex time, where they have the flexibility to set their schedule. Now, beyond that, we really have two options for hiring caregivers. A franchisee can handle it, right? Maybe it's a husband-wife, let's say, for example, and the husband's out marketing and the wife's doing the recruiting of the caregivers. That's a great way to kind of get this going. And we have a very specific process on what software to use, how to hire caregivers. We use some AI. We have some vendors that help out. But if that's not really an option, we can do it at the corporate level. So for a fee, the franchisee can basically allow us to vet caregivers for them in their local area. And then we present, qualified caregivers for the franchise owner, kind of the back end of the hiring funnel, if you will, or the bottom of the hiring funnel, where they can then accept or not accept that particular caregiver to start working for them. So yes, they're hiring a lot of caregivers. because maybe caregiver A can work full time, caregiver B can only work weekends, caregiver C can only work on Tuesdays, right? We're okay with that, but because of those things, you're going to have to hire a lot of people. So again, they can either tackle that themselves using our process, with us supporting them and training them, or they can kind of have us do 80 or 90% of the hiring process for them.
That's super powerful. I do find that a lot of franchisees or potential franchisees, people that want to take the leap into business ownership, they get caught up on the type of team. They get caught up just on the fact of hiring people in general, and they don't really think about the assistance or help or the type of team that they want to have as employees underneath them. And a part of my job is helping them facilitate, based on their experience and skill set, who they can hire and who they would be good at managing. So it's cool to hear that you guys at least offer the ability to help them facilitate that. And I like personally, I should say it like this, I'm not afraid of having more people because I like the opportunity to have a flexible team. I agree. I think especially nowadays, people enjoy the ability to build their work around their life. Yeah. Where back in the day, it was, I got to build my life around my work. Yep. And so businesses and jobs that allow people to do the opposite is pretty cool. I want to switch a little bit and talk about your ideal franchisee. Who are the individuals that come in that you guys have seen? I know, you like people that are gritty, that work hard, that have a good work ethic, but do you guys find that specific to your brand and your culture, certain people fit where others don't?
Yes, absolutely. We have kind of two main avatars that we typically look to or reference against to see if a candidate is the right candidate. Obviously, every franchise brand out there wants the heavy hitter salesperson that's going to go out and develop business, and we're no different. Ideally, the franchise owner in a second family location would want to be the face of the business in the community. As much as it pains me to say, and this is coming from the guy who likes doing everything on the computer, I'd love to be able to spend thousands of dollars on Google ads and have all of this business come rolling in and the phone's ringing off the hook. That's just not how senior care works. People tend to not plan in advance for this. It's a very referral driven business, and therefore it's a very relationship driven business. So the typical sales cycle would be mom falls, she goes to the hospital, she goes to the rehab center, and now she's coming home. And I have no idea, as the adult child, what am I going to do? I can't care for mom. I need help. And so it's the social worker, the discharge planner, the nurse, whoever at that rehab center that's providing a recommendation. So our ideal candidate is out making relationships with those facilities so that when someone's discharging, they're sending it to second family and not someone else. So that's a perfect scenario. An alternative scenario is, obviously there's a lot of behind the scenes operational type stuff that goes on in our business. And so if we did have someone who maybe they preferred to hire the business development role and they want to oversee the operations role, we have a path for that as well, where you're going to be closely involved with the hiring and the recruiting. You're going to be closely involved with the scheduling. Scheduling in our business is a gigantic puzzle. You got the client shifts that need to get filled. You've got the caregiver availability for filling them. And we got to work it together to keep consistency with our clients and our caregivers and make all of that work. So we do have two paths there. Again, our preference is the salesperson, but if someone's interested and they don't feel like they have a real strong sales background, they've got the ability to hire that, they enjoy the operations, much like myself, there's certainly a path forward there.
Did you guys plan on franchising from the jump, or was that something that kind of created itself and manifested itself as you were building this business? Yeah. I see some nods and some smiles. Come on, man. I'm excited for this. Come on, let's go.
It's a great question. We knew we wanted to have a national brand. We didn't want to limp into this thing, and we didn't want to buy a franchise, right? We wanted to kind of do things our own way, learn it, sure, and expand from there. But yeah, shortly into it, Matthew, it became very clear that the one thing in this industry that you need to have is people in the local market with skin in the game. The alternative would be us hiring regional managers, right? That kind of handle the Southeast or whatever, and expand it that way. But, the reason why this is traditionally a franchise system is because of the fact that you got owners who have skin in the game that can make this their baby. It's an emotional business, right? A lot of times the sales is really different than what I was used to, honestly, and had to pivot, right? The sale is being a good listener. How can you help these referral partners and these families that are going through a really difficult time? And the way you help them is to give them some resources, be a shoulder to cry on, maybe interjecting your personal story as well, right? And we're talking all the time, and whether it's a talking point or whether it's our website, brochures that we hand out, it tells our story, right? Why are we passionate about helping seniors? And my story was, I was a business owner in the financial sector, and I felt like I needed more meaning in my career. And here we had our grandmother going through this difficult time, and what could we do to, solve the problems that existed in the industry? And here's what we did. And, hey, we use technology, we use all these things, but really the root of our mission is to help as many seniors as we possibly can nationwide. In order to do that, in an organized, successful way, we needed to have franchise owners who were, on the same page with us and our mission as well. So, it became clear just maybe a few years into starting that franchising was the way we needed to expand.
What was that experience like in the sense of how did you have to grow operationally to be able to franchise your business? And just for context, I have people hit me up all the time. If I had as many people hit me up about buying a franchise as they were trying to get me to help them turn their business into a franchise, I think I'd be the most successful consultant in the game right now. But it's just not the case. I get so many people that are interested and they want to turn their business into a franchise for the opportunity to scale and the beautiful aspect of what franchise provides in that way. But it's a lot harder than a lot of people think. And so maybe speak into that person and how did you guys have to elevate your game in order to become a successful franchisor?
It's a lot harder, and it's a lot more time consuming and expensive, and all of the things that you don't want it to be is exactly what it is. We were interested in franchising. We had dabbled in having a couple of additional sales reps in our Maryland office here where we were growing our footprint, just geographically testing what would it be like to have someone who's going out maybe a little bit farther if we wanted to open other locations. And that's where I think the clarity of the benefit of the franchise model came for Chad and I. Was these people they're wonderful employees, but they're not in it the way that a franchise owner would be in it. And so that's when the switch was flipped. Like, okay, franchising is a much better alternative. We'll get people who have personal experience in this industry and want to be growing a location. I think that as we were planning, so once we got to that point, we're like, okay, let's move down the road towards franchising. What do we do next? I have no idea. So we found a consulting company who helped us develop the policies and the procedures and the handbook and all of the things that you need in order to roll that out. And so we started moving in that direction. And then, again, stumbling across some of the challenge that come up. How do we generate leads? What is these franchise brokers that we hear of, or the consultants, like, what do they do? What's their role? And so there's a long learning process for us as just figuring out how the whole thing worked and different players involved. But the main thing that we needed to do was make sure that our Maryland office was solid. And so I think that the point in time where we started giving more of our time was when the Maryland office felt like it was running smoothly, that we had elevated some internal key employees here to take over more than they were doing previously. And yet we stayed involved at the beginning to make sure that that was still going well at the same time. And certainly there's questions and they were learning on the job. And candidly, we've probably lost a little bit of what we had from handing it over to employees. I think that's maybe a natural thing to expect to a degree. But at the same time, it's been really fun to see some of those employees take on more responsibility and step up to the challenge and feel like they've taken ownership in their roles of helping the Maryland office grow as well. So it's definitely a very iterative approach, but having a firm foundation for your home office is very key before you really go too far down the franchising path.
Yo, thanks for listening this far. It's at this point in the episode that I want to talk about Streetwise franchising, teaching, training, building, Streetwise Franchising. As a franchise consultant, it's my job, it's my absolute pleasure, and it's my mission to help aspiring entrepreneurs find, launch, and build their ideal business. I've been a franchise owner for almost a decade. I know what it means to struggle. I know what it means to build a team. If you're ready to get off of zero, if you're ready to build something for yourself, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's get the conversation started. Don't wait until tomorrow to build your future. It starts today. Streetwise Franchising. Stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Let's get back to the episode. I mean, that's huge. Just talking about scaling a business in general. A lot of business owners and founders, they take so much pride in running the widget and running the business, and they become the bottleneck, right? And it becomes an issue, and they can't scale it because they can't scale themselves. But you truly have to be willing to sacrifice a little bit in order to put people in place that can at least maintain or hold down the fort in order to build a bigger beast. And then the other thing that you mentioned that I think a lot of people don't think about is when you franchise your business, you basically divide, and correct me on this, because this is just something that I've seen, but you essentially break up your operation and your capacity into 3 different phases, right? You have your main business structure, then you have to hold down and expand on franchise sales, and then you have to build out the actual operational support of your franchisee when you get them into the system. I mean, is that accurate? Am I missing anything that's additional, maybe a 4th leg, or is that pretty spot on?
I think that's pretty spot on. The consultants help us break down what we need to do to get business, what we need to do to maintain business, what we need to do to train our franchisees. And so you can maybe throw a few more silos in there, but from an umbrella standpoint,
Okay, cool. So you guys partnered with FSO. Explain that process to me. What has that been like? How have they been able to help you and facilitate your growth?
Well, yeah, ultimately we recently have a relationship with the Repham Group, and we actually were with a different FSO for about a year and a half prior to that, which we kind of, we're all about turning a negative into a positive here at Second Family, Matthew. And so it wasn't the best experience, the first FSO, but it really allowed us to kind of focus on, our operations. Like you said, that 3rd silo of kind of, making sure the franchisees that we had were up and running and doing well. And it's really a blessing in disguise. Really worked on our training program, really fine tuning that. And franchisees have had a lot of success, and good item 19, good validation, and all of that kind of good stuff. But, we had a long process of, joining the Repham Group. I think that from both sides, but, we wanted to make sure they were the right fit for us, and certainly they wanted to make sure we were the right fit for them. So that took a solid 6 or 7 months just to kind of get through that process. And I really think that they were the right partner for us for probably two reasons. Number one, they kind of really completely take over our franchise sales so that we could focus on the support and just supporting all of our franchisees that we currently had, and of course all of the ones that we expect to come along. Right, we need to be there for that. But also the Repham Group, they're kind of full service, right, where they're going to help us with that support of the franchisees that they're going to bring on board as well. So they actually don't really like the term FSO for themselves because they think they do a lot more, and totally agree that that's the fact that they're doing a lot more than just selling franchises for us. They're really helping make sure that we can support the franchisees properly, helping us find the next set of key employees that we're going to ultimately inevitably need to help grow this thing. And they are genuine about not just wanting to sell franchises, but making sure that you're successful long term. So for those reasons, that's kind of why we felt like they were the best fit for us.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think I'm gonna miss one. So if you can fill in what they do, but a part of Repham is build them, scale them, grow them. Is that right? Is there another one to it?
Brand them. That's their branding arm.
Got it. Okay. No, it's really cool. I like that, and I like that answer. You get a lot of these guys that are going into franchise ownership, and they're doing it with family. And maybe they're partnering with their spouse, but I mean, getting into business ownership, I mean, you guys doing it together, you guys are family, but you also have your respective families. How would you coach somebody up in that process of not necessarily, I don't really like the term work-life balance when it comes to business ownership, but finding harmony in building a business and maintaining your sanity and just the time that it takes in a business, and also respecting your family on that other side. Maybe where have you guys, let me ask you like this, what lessons have you learned from falling short on your own journey that you can speak into some prospective franchise owners?
That's a really good question. I would say so my personal experience was perhaps communicating better with my spouse what requirements work was going to, ask of me at the beginning. We got married not long after the business got started. And so we were still very much in the startup phase. And she's always been super cool about it and understanding. But there's many times, like we went to the winery one Saturday afternoon, and she had been looking forward to it. And I got there, it wasn't 15 or 20 minutes after we got there that we had a call out. A caregiver had called out and she wasn't able to go in, and I was the one that was covering the schedule that day. So I was like, I'm so sorry, but we need to go home. Like, I need to start working on this and calling caregivers and trying to get a replacement. It was early on in the business. Chad and I were still getting it off the ground, and so we were alternating who was covering the schedule on the weekend, kind of thing. And so having realistic expectations when you start a business, obviously the ultimate goal is that the business runs without you, right? And that you can check in and you're making an income and you're dabbling in it and you're managing people and you're seeing all of this growth without having to be in the trenches. And that's certainly everyone's goal, but that's not realistic when you're getting started. And so for me, it was having a real accurate mentality of, okay, the first 2-3 years is in the weeds time, and bring my wife along with me in that to say, hey, for the next couple of years, like I kind of have to be nose down, just pushing through. Stuff's going to come up. We got to work through it. And then after that, you come up for air a little bit, and the business is a thing, and it's got its foundation and it's starting to work, and you've got employees in place. And so you can pull back a little bit, but just having a real clear understanding of you're in the trenches for the first couple of years. And that's honestly where you need to be to get it off the ground.
Chad, you got anything to add to that?
There's a phrase I've used in the past, and as a business owner, you're always working and you're always not working. So,
I like
a business owner can have some flexibility, but to Josh's point, you're going to have more flexibility as time goes on. And I think it would be the same for any franchise owners that we've seen that, our most seasoned franchise location in Philadelphia have been open about 4 years, and him and his wife, they have kids, and they've gotten to the point where they're able to play tennis most days during the week in the middle of the day. Right? That's one of the things they do. And that's just one example of being able to do it. But yeah, we're looking for people that can put their nose to the grindstone for a couple of years. It's, it's a 24/7 business. So I've gotten complaints about that before, concerns, we'll call it, for potential franchise owners. And my response is always the same. It's like, what industry are you able to get paid 24/7? There's not a lot, right? So, it's give and take. And now, we've gotten to the point, probably 4 or 5 years into our business, in our home office in Maryland, we've got people covering 24/7, as far as scheduling, handling problems. My most seasoned franchisee, they have the same exact setup, where they have people working around the clock. We've got a good solution for that. We're actually using employees that live and work in the Philippines to handle kind of these things and kind of monitor the software. So there's a longer conversation. If anybody wants to talk more about franchise ownership, we can get more into it. But yeah, I mean, as the business grows, you're going to have more flexibility, and always not working is going to maybe be a little higher than always working, once you've been doing it for a little while.
Well, you hit on something that's super important, that it blows my mind how few people actually try to make this the following distinction. And it's in being a business owner doesn't mean that you necessarily work less than another person who has a 9-to-5 job. Being a business owner means that you get to control the amount of work and the type of work and how you work and what that actually looks like. Mm-hmm. Some of the most successful business owners are some of the hardest working people that I know. I mean, you guys not only own a business, but you're franchisors of a growing franchise concept with multiple franchisees buying into your system. You guys probably work pretty hard. I mean, you take the next 2 seconds to correct me if not, but I'm sure you guys work you work pretty hard. You're hard workers, but you get control over the type of work that you actually get to do. And so that kind of spins into the next thing that I wanted to ask you guys about, because from what I hear is you really want your owners to be engaged with the process. And I think, especially in franchising, the whole concept of semi-absentee, semi-involved, executive model, semi-passive, it's gotten so manipulated. And I think a lot of people are trying to backtrack now because it's getting called out for what it is. And in my business, I've been able to turn my business into a semi-absentee, quote unquote, or passive investment because I've built out the teams, because I've been here for almost a decade, right? 9 years, we built out this business. And so it's not needed for me to beat the drum on the day-to-day anymore because I have leader. But in the beginning, I personally find it's very important to be personally involved in the business, but the type of involved might be different for a different person. And I know that Josh, you already spoke on kind of the different pathways that somebody could come into your business, but I did want to give you the opportunity just in reference to the whole semi-absentee world and concept. How do you guys feel about that? And how many hours a week should somebody be prepared to work either in or on the business when they come into second family?
That's such an accurate delineation to make, is that semi-absentee is really just your choice of what work am I going to do and what am I going to hand off to other people. You'll see ads online all the time about making $2,000 a week passive income. That anything that makes a great clickbait headline probably is not going to make a great business foundation. And so if you want to do that, that more power to you, but that's not second family and it's not going to be a good fit. Absolutely. We need somebody that is in the trenches building the business. And to your point, that pulls back in time. And once you have the right staff and the right foundation, the right processes, and certainly that's why buying into a franchise system, the expectation is that you're going to get to that point more quickly because we have the systems and processes and training that's going to get you to that point more quickly. But you can't bypass that first couple of years as the franchisee where you are in the trenches, establishing all of the pillars that are going to support this growing business in the years to come. And so personally, for second family, we do have kind of a path where you can transition to whatever your full-time job is now into full-time franchisee ownership role with second family. That doesn't have to be end one day and begin the next day with second family. There's a process there where we can allow you to transition and ease into it. But our expectation is that if someone joins our team, it's because they want to do this full time. And for the first couple of years, they're doing it full time. And once you've got that, again, solid foundation, maybe we can start talking about backing off at that point, allowing more freedom in your schedule, making the decision of what do I want to handle versus what do I want to delegate to an employee. But yeah, second family. And I think, honestly, most franchises in the service business, if it's not a Google Ads, electronic spend where your business is coming from, I think most of them are going to be dependent on you as the franchisee being super involved in order to get it off the ground successfully.
I like that, and I appreciate that, because it's almost like a nuanced balance, because you have so many people that do work remote jobs that do benefit from those benefits, from that salary, but they're able to, there's such a big thing during COVID about people quiet quitting.
Yeah.
And people were so scared about that. But now, being 2024, I think people have been able to turn their remote roles into semi-passive jobs because they can execute everything they need to execute, right? They're still getting the job done. They're just not sitting at the water cooler wasting a bunch of time.
Yeah.
So you can be semi-passive at your job, but then really put in your intentionality. But that doesn't mean you can work 20 hours a week. You might be needing to find those hours creatively. It might take a Saturday evening or an early Sunday morning that you're intentional, especially in the launch of building your business. So I love that you matched me there, man. I thank you. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Okay. So Coach, here's something, and we're getting to the fourth quarter right now. And so I feel like we've been flowing well, and I need to make sure I keep track of my time. How do you coach somebody up on franchisee validation when people are candidates and they're looking into your system, what do you think is important that people should be asking franchisees that are currently in the system when they're investigating and when they're trying, maybe they're looking at a couple brands and they don't know which one to pick? What should somebody be asking and looking for when they're validating a brand and talking to franchisees who are currently in a system?
Yeah, I think that the one thing is the item 19. What are the results? It's obviously we kind of got pet. We're now past the point where we've identified our ideal candidate, right? And we think that someone could be successful, but they need to know that someone else has been successful. And when my franchisees have validation calls, they're probably going to tell them you got to bust your butt for the first year and a half to help get this thing off the ground. I want them to say that, right? Of course I can't influence what they say, but I do know what they do say, and that's what they're going to tell them. You got to work hard at first, because this is a kind of business where, they just put a car wash down the street from our office, right? I looked it up. The cost was almost $3 million. It took like 6 months to build this car wash, and $3 million, right? And so I'm pretty sure that person's going to make their money back pretty quickly and be profitable right away, day one. But that's a big investment, right? We're talking with us, between 120 to 200,000 on an investment. And so when you have that situation, it's really not going to be an option to be semi-passive. You got to come in, work hard. But the good thing about our industry is it might take you 4 to 6 months to develop relationships in your local community, like our other franchises have done. But the great thing about it is those are relationships that are going to last a lifetime. Some of my best friends that, are in this industry that I met, right? And that's really what we want the franchisees to do, is to go out there in the senior care world, meeting social workers, nurses, physical therapists, people like that, and building lifelong relationships, making friends. And so that's what, as far as the validation goes, I think that's what our franchisees are going to tell some of the prospects. And then, now you have a different set of problems, which is, now I got the business. I need to make sure I'm well staffed. I got to make sure I'm managing my team well and things like that. So I think that, over the course of time, that's important. The other thing specific to our industry, if I was looking into a franchise, I would want to make sure that the company had the proper systems and software in place. And, we could talk all day, probably a whole nother different podcast about all of the technology that we've implemented over the course of time. But short version is, we've built a system where all of our locations are operating 100% off of the same software platforms at all times, whether it's CRM as far as finding new clients, whether it's our scheduling software, billing, payroll, everything is completely 100% the same from one location to the next. And what that really does, Matthew, is allows us to train these people properly. Josh has created these instructional videos. All of our training is video based, and basically it walks them through, how to do every single thing. Here's how you convert a lead to a client, and it's a video that walks you through it. A franchisee, before they open, is going to learn all of this, but then the bullets are going to start flying. They're going to get their first clients, and we're going to point back to that video. Hey, watch this video again so you know how to do it, because we need to make sure that they're going to follow the process to learn the process, right? So I think the biggest thing in our industry, and the biggest thing, honestly, that was lacking, that we needed to solve a problem for in our industry, was the lack of technology. People would always say, well, old people don't use computers. Well, that may be true, but it's less and less of a concern now. But the families do, right? When we get a client, most of the time it's dealing with the children or someone else who's making the decisions, right? And so they're using the technology, right? And they might live in California, the care is taking place in Maryland. So what can we do to make them feel like they're part of the effort of helping their loved one, right? So, just talking to other franchisees with validation, but also validating us as far as, do we have the systems in place that they can run with it, right? Josh mentioned, speed, right? We're bringing speed to the table. How fast can I get clients? How fast can I become profitable? How fast can I become this profitable, right? It's faster when you have the systems in place. So I was investigating the senior care world, that's kind of the things I would look at.
No, it's helpful. I appreciate that. And something that I'll add just specifically to you guys, what I can tell just by listening to you talk and from the little that I knew about you guys before having this conversation, but just you being new to our portfolio at FranChoice. And I always tell my candidates, and I always talk about on this platform, the importance of validating the franchise founder and their experience in the space. And that the fact that you guys have been operating this business for a while before franchising and you maintain that operation of your core business is super important. So many franchise concepts do not have that. And I want it to be stated here to the listener, if you're talking to a brand that doesn't have that core business, I'm not saying it's a red flag, but you need to be careful. And if you're engaging with a brand that does have experience running the core business itself, they can come in because they've done it. They haven't just created the systems from the cloud. They've actually built it and have years. That's huge. So this isn't just to hype y'all up, but it kind of is because I think that's a special feature that y'all have that not a lot of people do. Okay, as we wrap up, I really want to talk about, I don't want to miss this, the culture of the franchisees. Do you guys do anything in maintaining that culture? I know a lot of brands will have a conference or a family reunion or type of stuff, but really outside of that, do you find that it's important to build a culture of franchisee engagement with amongst your franchise owners? And if so, how do you even make that possible?
It is important, and I think, if I'm candid, I think that's an area where we have lacked, and we are intentionally addressing and trying to do a better job. It's difficult when you have a small number of franchisees. We're still trying to get off the ground. And so you hear about the bigger brands having these conferences and all of the different things that they're able to do with their franchisees. We've got 4, and we've given them a lot of TLC and a lot of one-on-one attention. And I think where we have come up short, not intentionally, but just maybe blind to it more than anything, was their desire to interact with each other more. Yeah. And maybe not even less with Chad and I, but maybe less with Chad and I, and just with each other more. And so, I don't know, maybe a year ago or so, we started doing quarterly calls. Traditionally, we've met twice a month with each of our franchisees. One meeting would be a sales strategy meeting, and the other would be a recruiting and HR meeting. And so on top of that, we started doing quarterly meetings where we would get everyone together. One of the feedback pieces that we got from them is like, hey, you do a great job of coaching us one-on-one, but we don't really know, like, on corporate side, what's going on, what's the long-term vision, what's in the pipeline. And so, our response was absolutely, that's great. Thank you for the feedback. We haven't done a good job of that. So we started doing these quarterly meetings to try to keep everyone in the loop with what's going on, what new features are we rolling out in the software, what projects do we have in the hopper that we're working on. And now most recently, the feedback has been, we'd like to talk to each other more and learn not only from the franchisors, but from the other franchisees. How have you overcome some of these problems? And so I'm glad that you asked this question. This isn't prompted, but we're about to roll this out, that in just a few weeks, we're going to have our first franchisee meeting where, we'll kind of moderate it and be on the call, but the franchisees are really going to set the agenda and do the question asking and answering. And so we're really excited about that, and to hear what's going on, allow everyone to hear what's going on in each location and kind of learn from their peers is an exciting thing for us. And certainly we're excited corporately to continue to grow our system and have more of that take place. But yeah, it's a delicate balance, honestly, as a new franchisor. How much do you bring the franchisees in, and how much should we be doing for them and not necessarily telling them about? And so, again, we're not perfect. We've made some mistakes, and there's been a few bumps, and we're learning. And it's exciting to see when those relationships get built and those conversations start to flourish, what can come from that.
Man, that makes me so happy to hear you say that. Not just the vulnerability and the transparency that you just put out there, but also the fact that you acknowledged areas where you can grow and you're actually doing something about it. I think that's super special. I think a lot of people that are in this space, they don't want to show any sort of mistake or vulnerability or anything that they've done wrong because it makes them look bad. But in my mind, it makes you look better and it elevates your presence and gives you a presence of strength and confidence. And I think that when it comes to franchisees collaborating, that is the power of a franchise system. I mean, at the end of the day, you guys created something that was special, but it's the combined efforts of the system from the franchisees' experience, from doing it in different markets. Because like you said earlier, Chad, they do have skin in the game that not a lot, I shouldn't say not a lot, but not every franchisor has that mindset. And I love that you do. We're running short on time, fellas. I appreciate you guys so much. There was a couple other things I wanted to hit on, but I'll just take the opportunity to say, if you ever want to come back to the Streetwise podcast, I enjoyed talking to you. So if you ever want to chop it up, or this platform I hold with my hands facing the sky, palms up, and whatever the Lord has for it, I'm just putting it out there and being a conduit of information. So my last official question for you is this. When you're trying to get somebody or coach somebody off of zero, you guys had to make a leap. You guys had to trust in yourself, in each other, in your ability, but also the market, that you'd be able to build something that was special, that people would want, not just when you launched the business, but when you decided to franchise it. A lot of people right now are stuck. They're wearing cement shoes, or their feet are just in the mud. Think of whatever metaphor you want. They're stuck and they're having a hard time taking that first step. How would you coach somebody up if you came across them based on your experience in taking that first step off of zero?
I mean, if not now, when? I sold the first several franchises with Josh's assistance. And the first few franchisees that came on board, had to put their faith into us. I mean, it's a burden. I guess maybe not the best word, but it's we needed to make sure that we not only were successful for ourselves, but for our franchisees to put their trust in us to take that leap, right? And so every franchisee that comes after the next, maybe they're taking just a little bit less of a leap than the one before, right? Just a little bit less, but it's still a leap. But thankfully, we had some amazing franchisees that decided to take the leap with us. They saw the value in a newer brand. They saw the future of our industry, and all of those things are so important. But we've talked a lot about it. They need to do their homework, but at some point, you just need to jump. And we're jumpers. I think Josh and I, we took a chance to make this thing happen, and we were going to do it right or not at all. And I think it would be the same thing for anybody looking at it. With that being said, there's not everybody's meant to be a franchise owner or business owner in general. There's plenty of people that, are going to go their whole life working for whoever they work for. And that's okay too. But if you're not that person and you don't want to do it, you just got to take the leap, man. Burn the boats and don't turn back.
Yeah. And I'll add just quickly on that. I heard a really good speaker recently, and she was talking about fears and how in her mind, she always did the what if. And I think so many people do the what if. I do the what if all the time as well. What if this goes wrong? What if I lose all my money? What if I make the wrong decision? And she made a really interesting point that I had never thought of before. Why don't we ever do the what if to the positive side? Like, what if this does succeed? What if I am happy in doing this? What if this fulfills the dream that I have that I've been deferring? And I just thought that was such a spot on observation. And so that would be my encouragement, is do the what if to the negative, but do the what if to the positive side too. And then you can make an informed decision.
Love that. Love that. Fellas, I appreciate you guys so much. Streetwise Nation got a ton of value here today. To the listener, man, listen to this one again. If you're interested in second family, reach out to me. I can connect you to the team. But until next time, stay humble. Stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.
Thanks, Matthew.
All right, everybody. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for making it to the end. Hey, if this episode added any value to your life at all, please like it, share it, give me a 5-star review. It's the only way that this show is going to gain traction and help more people achieve their dreams. If you're ready to start your franchise journey, visit streetwisefranchising.com. Let's set up a time to talk. hit me up on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay humble, stay hungry, stay streetwise. Peace.